So thank you for coming. On behalf of Jason, Parish President Bergeron, Jason, I wanted to welcome you all to this public meeting for the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funding. Okay, we'll get into the specifics in a moment. I just want to also take a minute to recognize some of our elected and parish officials. We have from Council District 2, Mr. Carl Harding. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay, Council District 3, Clayton Voisin Jr. We have Council District 6, Mr. Claude Hamner. Council District 7, Mr. Danny Babin. From our Planning Commission, Travion Smith. I know he said he might have to leave early. Okay. And then Mr. Clarence Williams, who's with the Houma Restoration District and with the NAACP. Thank you for coming. I hope I covered everybody. Oh, I'm sorry. Candace Malden, our CFO, the money lady. Yeah, show me the money. But again, I wanted to thank you all for coming. And tonight we're going to be talking about the project list for this funding, okay? Right now we just have some project ideas, and some of them are specific projects, some are more general headings, but we'll be jumping into those here in a second. Next slide, please. So $117.6 million is what was allocated to Terrebonne Parish. This is HUD money. That's where it's sourced from. It is allocated to Terrebonne through the state's Office of Community Development. And this allocation is for Terrebonne Parish. Other parishes and municipalities have their allocations, but it's all tied back to Laura, Delta, and Ida funding. It's not just Ida. The state sort of started combining all these into one big project program, right? So initially, the state said, well, we're going to split this into two allocations. 41 million, 41.4 million was allocation one. That was announced in early October. We submitted the list of projects January 5th. It was due the 8th, but we got it in early. 76.2 is this second allocation. That's the list that we're talking about today. It was announced in November, and the deadline is March 19th. Now, it was February 19th, but we were able to get OCD, Office of Community Development, sorry for acronyms, but they pushed it back. So combined, the total is $117.6 million. Next slide, please. So the requirements for this money, all federal money comes with lots of strings attached and eligibility requirements. So it has to be tied to the storm event. Now, for us, it's Ida. But other parishes out west, it'd be Laura, Delta, for example. The project must be in Terrebonne. It must meet the national objectives to benefit low to moderate income persons. 40% of the allocation must be spent in disadvantaged communities. And then the funding timeline is, I think it's July 31st of 2028. And then there are your project's going to fall into one of two categories. It would either be hometown revitalization, which is essentially economic development, or it'd be resilient communities infrastructure. So that sounds like what it is, infrastructure. But again, no matter what category of the two it falls into, it still has to meet these other two objectives. Low to moderate income, benefit to low to moderate income, and disadvantaged communities. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be built in a low to moderate income area per se, if it's benefiting low to moderate income. An example would be like a big infrastructure project, like say a wastewater treatment plant. Okay, well, everything flows downhill, right? Wastewater flows downhill. So when you cite a project like that, maybe the best location for it, while it may not be in particular in a low to moderate income area, if it's benefiting low to moderate income residents, then it would be deemed eligible. The map on the left, we have some more slides that, well, let me touch on one more thing before we switch. It cannot be used for affordable housing, homeowner repairs, reconstruction, or elevations. We do have in Terrebonne Parish a reconstruction and elevation program that was funded through our hazard mitigation grant program. Homeowner repairs, I know that our Housing and Human Services Department has some programs for that kind of thing. Affordable housing, though, for the larger housing it's a HUD. This is all HUD money, but HUD gave that side of that money to the Louisiana Housing Corporation. So this disaster recovery allocation that we're talking about can't be used for affordable housing. The LHC got those funds. Okay, next slide. So here's a little bit of the definitions of the disadvantaged communities. It's tied back to Justice 40 initiatives, but essentially it's based off of the disadvantaged and overburdened by pollution and underinvestment in housing, transportation, water, wastewater infrastructure, healthcare. And it goes on to say that it's identified in the census tracts. And that do we have the enlargements on the slide, on the next set of slides? We do. Yeah, so we zoomed in a little bit on the maps because Terrebonne Parish is such a big parish. It was hard to see, especially when you get into like Homa area specifically. It's hard to make out where those areas are. So next slide, we started zooming in on those. And again, this slide deck and this presentation, the link of the video to it will be on our website. Keep going through these. And we can go back to these at any time during our conversation tonight. I think we took 4
we did,
shots.
We did quadrants,
Yep, around the parish. Not a whole lot in that
right.
in that southwest corner, right? Okay, yeah, next set of slides. Let's go to, okay. I mentioned earlier 2 primary types, resilient community infrastructure and the hometown revitalization program. When the state first announced this money, they said, okay, it's got to be one of these 2 types, and they wanted us to split it between them. But they came back later and said, well, we don't really care how you divvy it up. As long as your projects fit into one of these 2 types, they said, well, we'll just view it all together as one. So, again, all of the job or project ideas are rooted in one of these 2. And again, resilient community infrastructure benefiting the low to moderate income. The economic revitalization, we're mainly talking about job creation, right? Or we'll talk about some of the projects, but if it's like a small business grant, right? That could be just about anywhere, right? The business could be located anywhere in Terrebonne Parish. So in that project type, it would be that the people who are benefiting, the people applying for it would have to meet eligibility requirements, one of them being low to moderate income to qualify for that small business grant. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this is just a little bit about the timeline of things. We're in the first bullet item, public meetings, citizen participation. So again, we have this being recorded. The slide deck's going to be on the website. You do have on your tables a QR code that if you wanted to have a quick link to our online survey, you can fill out the survey. If that's not your thing, if you prefer emails, the survey, you're limited into the number of the characters you can put in the responses on the survey. If you talk a lot, like some people, you might want to use the email address that the link is on that website. And then finally, if you want, you can also fill out one of the cards on the table. And if you don't have enough, they're not very big, so if you want someone to contact you later, then put that on that card. Put your contact information. So at this point, we're pulling this information together, and we're going to be submitting our list of projects to OCD, Office of Community Development. It's the State Office of Community Development that makes the final determination about which projects are really approved, right? We have to provide them the list, and the parish together puts that list and submits it, but it's OCD who makes the first determination. From there, once we submit, they have 3 months. OCD has 3 months to review it and then get back to us. So 3 months beginning January 8th for that first allocation of $41.4 million, and then 3 months from March 19th for the second allocation. Now, guys, they could be holding back our allocation one review, and they may look at all of the projects that we submit really at one time, right? We don't. This is their deadline, but they make the rules. It's their program, so they can move their deadline back. It doesn't work the other way, mind you. So once they get back to us, then we have 3 months to really do a deeper dive into the project specifics. Right now, what we're submitting is just some general parameters, if you will. But we have 3 months from once they tell us, then we will submit a more detailed application that gets into, okay, who are project partners, agreements, if we need CEAs in place, all that kind of stuff, cooperative endeavor agreements, contracts, all that stuff would be part of that. Then once we submit that, we have 3 months to do that. Then we'll move into our environmental review, and we have 6 months to complete that. And then finally, once that's done, then we submit final project plans and specs, and that's a 6-month window. Yes, sir.
Going back to the one you say submission of individual project application to OCD.
Yeah.
You said something about the cooperative endeavor agreement.
Yes.
That's a public-private partnership?
Correct. It could be for a project type.
So how do you go by your selection process of picking those members that's a part of that PPP prior to receiving or being allocated in the funds? How do you already know who the members are in this co-op agreement?
Well, some projects we would know ahead of time. Some we don't. Some we'd have to procure. Some we'd have to procure. We'd have to put it out.
But you just said that you're going to submit to OCD.
Mm-hmm.
And that process, right there, that's not the last process.
Right.
You said you're going to submit to OCD, and you're going to have this cooperative endeavor agreement.
Can I clarify one thing? I'm so sorry. That is an agreement between the parish and the Office of Community Development. So that phrase, 3 months from OCD allocation CEA approval, that means Terrebonne Parish had to enter into a contract with the Louisiana Office of State Committee. We do not have any CEAs for any project.
So between, once they have 3 months from March 19th, right, to review allocation 2. We're waiting.
You said that y'all don't have any CEA.
That's right. So we're waiting, right? But once they come to us and say, okay, guys, these projects are approved, you can start moving forward for this submittal. At that point in time, we'd have to put an RFP out or an RFQ or whatever it ends up being to procure project partners for a project. So let's say it's some sort of community center facility that requires someone to operate it. Okay, well, who's going to operate it? The parish can't do that, right? So we'd have to put an RFP out to procure those project partners, and then once we do that, then they would be in the application that we then turn in at this level, right? And of course, the contract for those services is contingent upon the final approval of that project. You follow me? Okay. The deadline for all of the money to be spent, built, projects closed out, all of that is July 31st, 2028, which sounds like it's a long way off, but really it isn't. Especially when you're dealing in federal dollar world, things move really slow. So, that to me seems pretty aggressive, and I'm happy for that. I mean, guys, we still have open grants on Gustav Ike and Katrina Rita. So 2028's pretty good. Next slide. Okay, so these are some of the meetings that we've held on this particular CDBG DR. Now we have had, and you can see we had 2 in Homa, 1 in Chauvin, and then we'll have tonight's meeting. What this doesn't list are the council meetings that we've had discussions about this, but we've also had meetings back in the fall of 2022 around the parish. We had 7 total that were part of what was, at that time we were working on our long-term recovery plan. And a lot of the project ideas and issues that we heard in those meetings, we also heard at these meetings. So some, really we didn't just start thinking about the list in September of 2023. This goes back to fall of 2022, a lot of these project types. Yes, sir.
Getting back to the final date, I know we had this discussion at our last council meeting, and I don't know if we got clarification on it yet. That final date that they used was 2028.
Mm-hmm.
We determined yet that the project had to be started by that date, or if it was in some kind of design or whatever, that the date would be continued? I know what our conversation was at the meeting, maybe you could just give
Well,
us clarification.
I mean, right now they're saying July 31st, 2028 to be done, finished, spent, 100%, money expended, thank you, closed out. I mean, after we spend all the money, then the no offense, but the bean counters have to go through and do the audit and do all that stuff, right? And they got to turn all that in the format that OCD and HUD wants and all that kind of stuff. And all that takes time. So you start backing out away from July 31st. I mean, it's, it has to be really done probably first quarter of 2028 to get to meet that July 31st. But what happens if we get another storm? What happens if we have a significant delay that's no fault of our own? It's at OCD or HUD's end of things. Okay, well then they might have to concede and push that out a little bit. They did on the February 19th. Initially, the allocation 2 is February 19th, but we said, guys, I mean, we have a new administration that's just come in. It was incidentally the Monday after Mardi Gras week, but they don't care about that. But they did go ahead and agree to push it back to March 19th. So there is some precedence. Yes, sir.
Chris, will compliance requirements be a part of the RFP?
I'm sorry, what?
The compliance requirements be a part of the RFP?
Yes.
Okay, who drafts the RFP?
Well,
We'll be working together as a team using the parish's normal procedure and making sure that we have.
so let me first say this is Sarah Olivier. Sarah is with CSRS. CSRS is the consulting firm that the parish procured to help us with our hurricane recovery. They helped us with our long-term recovery plan back in 2022.
So they'll be preparing.
Yes, sir. With whoever's identified, depending upon the particular project, who needs to be part of that. So that we'll put together the RFP that then gets pushed out for responses.
But you're correct, all of those federal compliance will have to be part of any contract, engaged in anything. All of
Yeah.
the Davis Bacon, all the Section 3, all the things that are a part of spending this type of federal money is absolutely, has to be a part of every contract, every RFP, anything that gets issued with using these dollars.
And
Right.
so we have a lot of rules and regulations to follow at our end. I mean, just last week we had a day-long training at OCD. Well, technically it was at the Housing Corporation's offices, but OCD hosted it, and Candace and I and several others attended along with CSRS, and there were folks from all over South Louisiana. Anybody who has been allocated money, it was a mandatory meeting. You got to be there because those were the kinds of things they reviewed.
Last part of the question. Are the mounting efforts independent or part of the
That would be part of the contract that's put into the RFP, that they include. It's not just you have to follow this. Somebody's got to make sure they're following it. And you got to turn in certain things at certain milestones. They got to turn in all the documentation and things like that. So it's going to be watched.
That's right, it all gets reviewed by OCD. all
Yeah.
the monitoring.
Yeah. So,
But if you don't, if you don't feel like what's going on is proper, you also could take matters in your own hands and file a bid protest too. And you can stop all that every time you get ready. So you ain't gotta wait on nobody else to monitor nothing.
and, everything that we're doing, of course, is matter of public record too. I mean, those things. Once the RFPs go out and then, once it's selected and awarded, at that point in time, I think all of the responses are part of or eligible for public records requests. So there's opportunities. I mean, yes, we have to monitor the projects, but there's also opportunities for folks, the general public, could request the same. So, do you have any more, or is that okay? So this is just a quick snapshot of some of the responses. Just since last council meeting, I think we had 78 surveys. Now we have 103. It's still, when you consider a parish population of 104,000, we got a long way to go. But this kind of gives a quick snapshot, and again, this slide and the others will be on our website if you want to study this more. But the QR code that's on your table, that's this survey. Okay. But flood protection, infrastructure expansion, those were just some of the priority areas, and you can see, how it was split in terms of the survey results. And these are just kind of generalized categories. Small business support, 64%. I mean, you can definitely see where people are interested in infrastructure expansion. I think a lot of that's probably the wastewater, community sewer has a lot roots in that. Go ahead, next slide, please. Okay, this is the first allocation that was submitted. Now, mind you, this is all really part of the overall 117 million, but these were the project ideas or project lists that were submitted back in January. Now, some of these are very specific. Geraldine Pump Station, local cost share, okay, 3.5 million. That's one of the most specifics you can get, right? That's what that money is for. But, support to seafood industry, small business incubator, activate the bayou. Some of these other ones are broader categories that although you might say, well, I submitted a project idea, I don't see it on the list. Well, that's one of the things we want to talk about tonight. If you have a project idea, we may say, okay, well, that would be eligible. That would be the type of project that we would put under support to seafood industry or small business incubator, right? Again, the numbers too. I mean, Geraldine Pump Station, local cost share, that number's, I'm not saying it's 100% fixed, but it's more fixed, say, than some of these others. I mean, some of the other numbers may go up, may go down once we get a deeper dive into the project specifics. That's the list. We also had to submit some alternates, okay? So these alternates, if, let's say, all of these projects are approved, then these three alternates would be on the second allocation list, right? Now, again, this list is submitted to OCD. So they have 3 months to look at it and say, well, guys, I'm sorry, but we don't think this aviation program at Fletcher is eligible. Okay, well then, could we move one of these alternates over to fill that gap? We're not going to know that answer until, we get into, 3 months will be what? April? So,
They haven't made any promises.
yeah, well, there you go.
So we're talking about the allocation of all this funding being strictly for Terrebonne Parish and, having an opportunity for low and moderate, or low to very low income individuals participation?
Correct. So,
How long we been getting this money?
say what?
How long we been getting this money?
Well, it was allocated, they announced it last fall, October, for the first.
First time we got CDBG money? That's what I'm asking.
Well, no. This is the first time we've got CDBG DR money for IDA.
Okay,
probably more, longer than that.
Longer than that, right. So why is this the first time that we are including the low and very low income individuals? That's what I'm getting at. If we've been getting this money all these years, 20, 30, 40 years, why is this the first time that we are including the participation of the low and the very low income individuals? 20, 30, 40 years?
I don't have an answer for that.
Okay, nobody answer that. Make too much sense.
I'll just throw in my 2 cents on it, you know, but I can remember when I was in high school, a whole street downtown, the homes were redone with community development block grant.
Okay, now I know you look like you about my daddy. So you close to 65.
Huh?
You close to 65,
Well, don't
67.
tell everybody.
I'm just saying, I see
Yeah, I'm
a true
67.
gentleman. I'm 67, like I said, you my daddy age. So I can see a true gentleman.
When I was,
Right. Now, that's a long time ago.
yeah, when I was at Nichols, I worked part-time for, South Central Planning and Development Commission that, you know, they ran CDBG money. They did have public input. Depends when you grew up and how much of an activist you were, you know. A lot of people didn't go back then. But they were always announced. I can remember that back, all the way back before I became a school teacher.
Yeah, it's a requirement with every CDB, DG allocation, that there's
Oh, I
public
know.
participation.
Yeah, I'm sure the rules were a little bit
All over the
different.
country. I know exactly.
Yeah.
I'm sure the rules were a little bit different. Now, who's your dad?
Oh, my daddy named Tommy Jenkins. They call him Big Tommy.
Okay.
Yeah, you know who he is.
I just met him. Actually, I never met him. I just heard him speak a couple of weeks ago.
Well, that was me a couple of weeks ago, but that's where it came, yeah, that's where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Call me one day, we'll talk.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry, Chris.
No, it's okay. That's why we're here. We're here for discussions. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay. So these are the projects that are under consideration for the second allocation, right? Again, some of these are specific. Some of these are more broad-based. And we will, narrow that down, in the second round, but right now, the level of detail that is required for this initial submittal is very general. So right now, our estimate right now for a total of these is 83.1 million. We only have 76, 76.4 or 76.2. So, we're going to have to look closer at these and figure out, okay, well, do we adjust the numbers, or is one of, not all these projects going to make it onto the final list? That's part of what we're here to talk about, right? Is this the last slide, or okay?
It is, yeah.
Okay. So, right now, I want to open it up for more discussion, more questions. If anybody has ideas about certain project types, we can say, okay, well, that would fit under one of these headings, and also think about the previous allocation too. So it's not just these. Yes, sir.
Could you offer suggestions now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, can I just ask though, because Nikki in the corner is gonna be taking notes, so when we're gonna pass out those comment cards to everybody, if you don't mind just putting your name, and then Christy will collect those cards and give them to Nikki before you speak. And she'll just kind of call on people in order, so that we have the correct spelling, and make sure that everybody's from Terrebonne Parish before comments are made. So if you have a comment, you can kind of raise it up,
Look,
and
before the
Christy will
gentleman,
collect it.
say what he wants to say, I'm gonna say this. I think everyone in here and everyone who wants to participate, instead of just giving their ideas away, because people's ideas are valuable and they are worth something, it's called intellectual property rights, okay? So I think everyone wants to be included in the cooperative endeavor and intergovernmental agreements through the memorandums of understanding that you guys form through your municipalities. So I think it'll be great for any nonprofit organization or any businesses that have these type of business ideas or these project ideas, and that you guys consider that they are included, whether they be a consultant or they be the GC or they be a sub or something on that project, because just giving away people ideas and they're not getting paid for it and other people ripping the benefits ain't gonna work no more. Them days over with, man. Straight up. Them days over with, them days gone. We're not having it no more. We want our money, man. We want our money. Now, y'all, you said it out your mouth yourself. Y'all been getting this money for a very long time, and we have not been included. And yes, we are upset about that. Yes, we are. Because that's way too much money. And if you want me to tell you, I could break the numbers down to you standing right here. And it's simple. You could have fooled us with just $10 million. Imagine that. You're getting billions, and you could have fooled us with $10 million. You could have took 20 companies, local businesses, gave them each $500,000 contracts annually for the last 20 years. You'd have made them each millionaires with $10 million apiece. That's $200 million. I know math like the back of my head. I'm a genius for real. You see? So what's been going on need to stop. It really do. Because that's disgusting. You go to the east side of town, you look at the Parks and Recreation District. I see it, y'all got it up there. That's one of your projects. Go to the east side of town. You're building a $4.6 million park in Bayou Blue. They got splash pads and swimming pools in Bayou Black. They got the same thing on 311. They ain't got none of that in McCannaville and Village East. The fence land on the ground. Understand what I'm telling you. For 2 years, you got kids that can't go in their high school, that they got to sit in a modular building, in a modular library, a modular classroom, a modular cafeteria. They're going to miss their entire high school experience, high school sweetheart, homecoming football game, Sadie Hawkins.
Excuse me, one second. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. You're talking about recreation districts.
Yeah, because you got that as one of your projects. That's one of your projects.
You mind if I just make a
Yeah,
statement?
here,
Please.
here.
No, I don't need the microphone.
Yeah, they
Okay.
say whoever
No,
talking gotta
okay,
hold the
good,
mic.
good. All I'm saying is you're talking about splash parks and a new park. That's a recreation district paying for that. You're talking about schools. That's the school board paying for that. This is Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government and CDBG money specific for that. So what you're saying is not germane to what we're talking about here. I'm not saying, listen, I'm not saying, sir, that your opinion is not important, because it is. But it's not gonna, I'm not going to try to talk over you, because your opinion is.
Well, really, I was talking first. I was being nice and letting you talk if you want to know the truth.
But what I'm trying to tell you is what you were saying is not pertinent to what we're talking about.
Man, people crazy. All right, here you go, brother. I know I just seen Parks and Recreation up there. I know I just seen it. Everybody else just seen it. That was one of the projects. Here you go, brother.
Look, let me say that any project idea, whether you're saying it out loud tonight, submitting it via email, privately, whatever, however you want to do it, even if it isn't an eligible project for CDBG DR funding, I mean, good ideas are good ideas. So what we're doing is keeping an eye on all of those too, so we can say, okay, look, it's not going to make it on this cut because it doesn't do this or it doesn't meet this requirement or whatever it is. But we have other sources of funding that it might be eligible for, or we pass it on to another group. Like if it's something that's specific for a school, well then maybe we get with the school district on that. But I mean, we've got lots of money outside of just community development block grant DR money that comes to the parish, or we could apply for. I mean, there's grants out there all day long that we can apply for that aren't necessarily specific to this allocated money. Okay, who's next? Mr. Clarence, you got?
I would just like to make a suggestion that we add to our list there a Boys and Girls Club. We've been somewhat void of doing anything on a consolidated basis to address the needs of the teenagers and like who certainly can benefit from an organization like the Boys and Girls Club. So I would like to offer that to you to be included on that list.
right here. So that's a good example. So, whether it's new construction or it's renovating or an addition to an existing structure, that's eligible, the type of project that would be eligible in this funding. But part of the project has to, well, who's going to operate it? So in that instance, for example, if it's the Boys and Girls Club, then that's how that would be on that application when we fine tune it and make that second submittal. Boys and Girls Club, right? Rec districts also could also fall into that too. Yes, sir. Dwayne. Oh, wait.
Chrissy, you don't mind just grabbing that and taking it right over to Nikki so she knows.
Here, you can use mine.
Mr. Jenkins was bringing up the idea of the park, whose fenced and properties look a mess. So the rec district can enter into a cooperative endeavor agreement with the parish or with some folks indirectly, I guess, and have this money spent in that direction?
Your rec districts are very unique, so
Well-
I'm gonna have to let.
Certainly, if the Community Resilience Center is operated and programmed by the rec district,
Right.
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Now, as far as repairs to existing facilities, I mean, Candace helped me out with that, but a lot of them, I mean, their insurance money,
So it's-
like the schools, it's just now coming
It's
in.
the insurance allocation and the FEMA public assistance for those repairs.
Yeah. I mean, I know in the permit office, our chief building official and the permit office staff have been meeting. I mean, the meetings that they've been having with the contractors, the school district administration at the schools, what have you, architects, I mean, that's really just getting ramped up. And a lot of those, I mean, modular buildings are still out on the campus. I mean, my wife,
No, I was just talking about the
works there.
recreation part of that, because, we talked about the 15% of that money having to do with public services component, and I was just wondering if a cooperative endeavor agreement, whatever money the rec district got from IDA,
I'm sorry, I think
yeah.
the AV person is
yeah, I'm
frustrated
sorry,
that we're
yeah,
not using. because
whatever
right now
money,
this goes
yeah,
straight to-
yeah, all right, whatever money the rec district got from IDA, then it seems to me that, this program perhaps could be some gap funding to help with that program.
and we can, with DR money, is it eligible to combine with other federal funds? Or-
Some,
Duplication of benefits
That's
and
right.
certain federal funds.
So sometimes we can partner this money up with other federal funding streams. I know Councilman Harding has a question in the back. And we can make it go a little bit further, right?
Yes,
It's on, you're just not gonna hear.
you
It's,
just can't hear it.
the cameras hear it.
You need to use it for the camera. You use it because he's recording.
yes. Now, it is my understanding, and some of this backup that I have, activating the Bayou Phase 2. But in reference to recreation, I'm sure that has been a lot of conversation with different rec districts, how certain rec districts can afford this and other rec districts cannot afford it. But when the parish say that they own all property, technically, because these recreation districts, they actually are keepers of this property. And if you can submit, in my opinion, things such as kayak launches, public boat launches, public fishing piers, and those things of that nature, I think we also not only just look at the east side of Mr. Jenkins, there is a whole gym that's missing down in the Chauvin area. And I've actually been advocating that we actually look at these projects and see what's projects that would have more impact within these communities that have been actually severely devastated by the hurricane. So I think that if we could, in our application, try, if not, nothing beats a failure but a try harder. So we can try to actually assist Rec 11, Rec 10, and all these other recreation districts with some things that are very, very insignificant other than something such as kayaking, because I'm pretty sure up in the north end of this parish, not too many people that's gonna do any kayaking. So when we mention kayaking, we, up in the northern end of the parish, we should actually adhere to those people here. So those people that are sitting in here, your opportunity to speak is now. Because once this money is allocated, and it's allocated, we're saying January 8th, 3 months after that, April. We're looking at the 3 months after that. This is assumed, and it's not guaranteed money here. So we want to get it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am.
I want y'all, I've been to all these meetings, and the one thing I think we really need to stress a lot is we just make a list. We're not gonna have any say as to what the government picks. We're giving them the list of, this is our wish list, but it's gonna be up to them to pick what they wanna do. We have no say-so in that. We can just make suggestions on what we want. But when they get it up there, they're gonna say, oh, well, we're doing this. And it might not be something that none of us want, but it's what they chose to do or what they thought we needed, okay? So I don't wanna get people's hopes up that this is the be-all, the end-all, that we're gonna get all this money and everybody's gonna get what they want. They have strings attached to this money, and we have to go by those strings, and it's for them to pick out off the list that we have. So I just want everybody to understand that don't come back after this is over with and said, well, we told you we wanted this. Yeah, we got it, but they didn't want it. They didn't want to spend the money on that. They wanted to spend the money on this. So I'm just trying to get everybody on the page that they understand how this is gonna work, okay? Thank y'all.
And
Well, let me get the mic. Remember, you need to talk into the mic. Sorry, guys, otherwise
There's other people waiting.
Yeah,
We can come, I just wanna make sure.
I just have a quick question. So if the proposal is due on March 19th, when do y'all have to have the recovery proposal to the council to vote on it for approval? Is that next week that y'all have to have the recovery proposal done to turn in for the 19th?
So the.
The resolution with the list of projects, so not the actual recovery proposal, but the resolution that will give us the path moving forward to do the recovery proposal. So next week, y'all have to have the list to the council to vote on, so y'all can complete the recovery proposal for the following week. Okay.
Yeah, so a resolution from the council identifying the list of projects is part of the application requirement for March 19th. Just like we had a similar resolution for the January submittal. So that is Monday, this coming Monday, March 11th, at the parish second floor council meeting room is when that meeting is. And, you know, it's a public meeting there too. So, but that's when the council will take action on that resolution, and then it's ratified the following Wednesday at the regular council meeting. Sarah, okay. Mr. Wayne Thibodeau is on our planning commission too. I'm sorry, you didn't file, but planning commission. If the planning commission or the board of adjustment or any parish board or entity denies an application for something, they have to be very specific as to why. Like, why are you denying it? So we talked a little bit about this before the meeting started. So if there's a particular project that OCD denies, chances are they're going to deny it because it doesn't meet some eligibility requirement, right? That's the simplest way to deny it. But how specific do they get in that? Like, what if we think, well, yes, it does meet the eligibility requirement, and here's why, and we don't agree. Is there some sort of appeal or further discussion before we just say, oh, well, on to the next one?
So what I've seen from other parishes, some parishes have gotten feedback on their first allocation, and the response from OCD is very specific. They will say, we need more information about this. Tell us why this benefits these census tracts that you've identified. So we haven't had the chance to get that feedback from them yet. They have not shared that with us, but that is what would come to us. You know, it is part of our job and part of our due diligence to make sure that it does meet the requirements. Things are open to interpretation. You know, everyone does their best to make sure that these projects we're submitting are eligible. But yes, Chris, I'm sure that can open up a conversation. It's, you know, they're not going to randomly pick another, to your point, they're not going to pick another project. They really are trying, this is what they told us at the training, they're really trying to listen directly to the parishes, that they want the parishes themselves to say how they want their money to be spent. Could they come back to us and say, you know what, you need to tweak this project in a certain way, or we need more information, or, you know, that might be a stretch to say that that water management project really does benefit this community, and then we have to examine it and make sure that our facts are correct, and, you know, maybe we make changes. And as Chris said, you know, some of the dollar amounts may shift a little bit, but what OCD has told us loud and clear is they want the parishes to submit the projects that they want to advance.
And with the timeline, I mean, if there's a project, let's say it's a rec district who is looking to an addition to a gym or build a new gym, right? I mean, okay, well, I keep going back to this one, but this is a good example of a very general heading. But if we could identify, okay, this is a need for a community and it fits all of the eligibility requirements, and when it is storm time, recovery, response time, it serves as this resilience center, which, by the way, is oftentimes that's like in a community where people would go, not just a point of distribution, but it also could be a place where maybe FEMA or other government recovery agencies or nonprofits are there. It's a one-stop shop kind of thing, so you can go after the storm and get everything you need taken care of. Okay, well, what if that's the gym the other 364 days out of the year? You know, so that's where we get creative with the ideas that you feed to us to try and say, okay, well, this is how it meets the requirements, not just eligibility, but it also, you know, can fulfill the needs of the community. To say, oh, well, we want a new gym. Okay, well, show how that is tied back to the storm recovery. Yes, sir. Wait, you need a mic.
We've got a couple other people who are still waiting.
Yeah, can we have new people?
Okay.
Make sure everybody gets a chance to speak.
All right, thank you. Quick question. Authentication and identification. So, since this is going to be just for Terrebonne Parish and for low and very low income businesses and individuals, how we identifying the businesses? What's that process? How we going to identify them? Because I know we ain't got nothing right now, so what we going to do?
Yeah, well, that's where the project partners come into play. Okay, well, who is going to be doing that? I mean, my staff in the planning and zoning department can't do that, right? So that would be, we have to have staff, adequate staff to make those kinds of reviews, but we don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel either. I mean, if there's another entity in Terrebonne that already does that, then that's who we could consider partnering with to have them perform that particular task. I'm sorry?
Like census. Because, I mean, we know how many residents in Terrebonne Parish.
No, I'm not talking about census. I'm talking about if there's an organization already in Terrebonne Parish that does provide, and I'm just going to pick one because I know they do this. You have South Central Planning. They have a small business loan program. You know, if they were identified in the project application details to say, that's the organization that's going to review these applications to make sure that the person applying for it is indeed eligible for this. They're low to moderate income, disadvantaged community. So that would be how that could be handled. Yeah. That's why we're recording, so we don't have to write it down right now.
Those things are very, very spelled out. We have very little flexibility on what the definition of low income is. It is below 51% of an area median income. HUD sets area median incomes for every community in the United States. That is based on incomes, and they take, as it sounds, it's area median. Absolutely. Well, for the parishes, Terrebonne Parish, absolutely. We have that number, and that is how we do this census work. This is how we look at the census tracts and determine, is this eligible? We have no wiggle room on that. That is set by HUD.
Sir.
Thank you. I think I can get my arms around the concept that this is a collaborative effort relating to the CDBG concept, that it's a collaborative between HUD and the local municipality. And I'm assuming that, notwithstanding the fact that since HUD grants this money, they certainly have their compliance issues, and I assume that you may have yours locally based on activity and standing, in your territory. So I can get my arms around that. But what I can't get my arms around is that, notwithstanding any issue here, the constant that I'm hearing is that there is a low to moderate income component to this section or allocation of the CDBG money. So here's my question or my concern. How, in looking at some of these projects that's under consideration for allocation 2, how could stormwater master planning or downtown completion of streets benefit or work in concert with the concept of a low to moderate income presence? So can you give me some examples of that so that I can kind of better understand where they intersect?
Okay, so the stormwater master plan here. And this is the same idea that's behind the wastewater master plan. The first thing we need to do is an assessment of what our current stormwater system is, right? So we can identify the weak spots, the spots that need, maybe the infrastructure's aged, needs to be replaced. Maybe there is none, right?
You mean in a low to moderate income area? Is that what?
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, it would be, it's parish-wide, but it has, whenever we say, all right, well, because you kind of have to look at the plans as a whole. The systems don't stop at the low to moderate income borders, right? So you have to consider the system in its entirety because the water is going somewhere, the wastewater is going somewhere. But when it comes time to identifying, okay, where our priority areas are, where are we going to implement with priority projects, stormwater, both of these in the finer level of detail that we'll be submitting, even in this initial stage, it's master plan with implementation. So, some of those projects could be very expensive, so it may not necessarily address all of the infrastructure improvements that need to happen straight away, but it'll at least get us started, and we can at least identify the top priority projects.
So in this particular program, planning funds are not income restricted. So the parish could do a parish-wide plan of stormwater. If it was to identify areas that have repeated flooding, and those areas are low to moderate income, then that's where the implementation projects would go. And to address the comment about downtown is a low to moderate income area by census tract.
And my second question, thank you for that. Do you have, how are these various projects suggested? Do you have a template to fill out, or just send a memorandum, or how do you throw your hat in the ring to be considered for allocation, for funding and allocation too?
So some of these projects were identified in 2022 when we had meetings just like the one we're having tonight, where people said, well, I remember in Gibson, we need a better community center. We have an high elderly population. There's nothing for them to do. That hasn't left. And that was one of every time I see this, that's one of the things I'm thinking of. And that was just through a conversation, and CSRS was the consultant that helped us, they took all the notes, they compiled it. There is a long-term recovery plan that's on the same webpage that all this other stuff is housed, that has those concerns identified. And then similar conversations like this, I mean, we're taking notes, we're compiling the notes into, okay, well, does it fit into one of the project categories that's already been identified, or is this a new one? Certainly, the parish administration reached out to all the department heads and said, okay, all of you, with your experience and hearing what your department's needs are, where you think your problem areas lie in whatever aspect of government they serve, identify your top priority projects, submit that. Then you have the survey that's online. We have, emails, and then we have just handwritten stuff too. I mean, at some of these meetings, we've taken handwritten letters, or people have come back a day or two later, right, with that information. And so that's where it's kind of all of that, right? But you'd be surprised how many times we hear the same thing, Like small business grants, I mentioned that earlier. I mean, that could be, the business could be anywhere. It's the applicant that has to meet the eligibility requirements. Same with the seafood industry, support the seafood industry. I mean, that project idea ranges from direct grant program to the fishermen, or it could be like, say, a cold storage facility or a seafood marketplace like they have in other communities, where commercial fishermen can pull up dockside and sell directly to the public that way. I mean, all those kinds of things fit under that general heading. Yes, sir, Mr. Hardy. I know. Get you.
I'm just trying to get the government and the people to really kind of understand it. And if, let's say, for instance, we put a dot right here and we said underserved areas. So, and let's say, for instance, within a 10-mile radius, if this is a grocery store, and anything that applies with businesses, is a 10-mile radius where we find low to moderate or disadvantaged people within that particular radius. So the understanding here is that we're working with downtown, correct? Basically, and that's what I'm hearing from the people. So therefore, I'm trying to present something where people can actually have more input and get some ideas. Because when we do make the adjustments, if we can make the adjustments, we can make the adjustments. That would be more of a representation of all the people in Terrebonne Parish. And so I have this sheet of paper, and there's small business grants that's associated with this, and the downtown 4K improvement. And these are businesses that you actually allowing to have grants to come to those folk, certain circumstances within the application that they're going to apply. That is actually refurbishing downtown. And so the people that have talked to me and they're concerned about that, how does it affect them? And if someone that already has something, and they're saying, well, look, if you already have a building downtown, and you're getting assistance to get more business downtown, well, man, where are the benefits to them with all this money that's coming in? So, man, we have to really look at what we are presenting to the people. So, pardon me, Mr. Jenkins, we agree on this part. People that already got money get more money.
They get more money, and you helping them fix up buildings that they already own. It don't make sense. I'm with you.
So that's the point I'm trying to get, is for people to really understand how to actually make up the difference here. Because, to have better government, and I'm all for Terrebonne Parish going together, but I'm also for the people, when you say underserved and low to moderate income, that's what I'm trying to address. because trust me, I represent a minority district. So you know I got low to moderate and underserved. So I have to ask this question because I know Mrs. Lagarde, she would give you a sermon in the church. But right now, she's looking at me and she wants me to speak for her. And that's what I'm doing.
Can I borrow the mic, and I'll go back to you? I'm going to say a couple things real quick. Anybody that would get a grant in the downtown area would have to be low to moderate income. That is just a given. And there are a couple things I could say about economic development, bringing in more dollars to the community. But I just want to let you know, there is no grant, there's no program that isn't meeting that national objective, which is low to moderate income.
My point here is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the building. Let's say, historical downtown district. We got TITA that gives assistance. We got South Central Planning that can get downtown developers. So these are organizations that are going to get the funds and then also have other opportunities to get other grants to actually apply themselves for other projects that are within downtown. So it may look on paper to assume that they don't have or they meet the criteria, but then once they meet the criteria, they have an opportunity because they have a portfolio or they are showing themselves to be sound in their application for these extra grants to get millions of dollars to actually give them more advancement to where they are. And that's my point that I'm trying to say. So, well, look, yeah, we're going to give them $1 million, but that $1 million allows them an opportunity to get $5 more million. But then at that point, are they still underserved or low to moderate income?
Yeah,
In
they're
reference to the
successful.
dollar amount.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, I guess that you want them to no longer be eligible for that grant because then they
enhance themselves.
they've bettered their situation, so.
I got a question for Carl.
Go ahead. No, I'll be quick. Chris, on the initial slide, I know that building repairs and housing repairs are prohibited. And you named a couple of programs, the parish. Do you know the ballpark amount of dollars that are allocated to housing and repairs? And if you don't know the answer,
I don't know housing and human services.
okay.
But I can tell you that, I need the mic.
Oh.
I'll follow my own rules. I can tell you that the hazard mitigation grant program for the reconstruction and elevation, I think it was a little over 16 million that was allocated for that home reconstruction. That list of properties, we took applications and we had to submit that to FEMA in July of last summer. And we just got the green light on the first batch of about 30 or so of those, I think in November, December. And we expect to have the other batch. All in, there's about a little over 60 properties that were deemed eligible and were approved. There's a list of alternates. And then we have an alternate list that we weren't allowed to submit to FEMA, but we have it. Now, those folks, the way that program is basically the same as all the other reconstruction or elevation programs of the past, in that the homeowner, it's their decision as to who they choose as their contractor. They have to follow all of the requirements of the grant, and they have to build, base flood elevation +2, and the grant even pays to build the home to the fortified gold standard, which I know you're familiar with. So, that's going to be a rock solid house, but who that person chooses to use as their contractor is up to them, and our ramp division, as well as the consultants that administer the grant on our behalf, are monitoring and for compliance with the grant requirements.
No, that's good to know. Yeah, my name's Richard Watkins. I'm with the Bayou Community Foundation, and we've been extensively involved in rebuilding Ida since Ida. And my purpose here tonight is, number one, is it's a blessing to get $100 million. It's a curse to figure out how to spend it. And you're doing your best in outreach. When I see just 103 submissions parish-wide, it's very difficult to build consensus. So I think with 50 people here, but I'm happy that it will be ascertained through the best. You can only outreach as much as you can, and I think you're doing a good effort to do that. I don't want to debate the allocations of 1 and 2. These are all economic investments. I am of the opinion that you got to take a micro and macro approach. Sometimes the rising tide lifts all boats. So when you talk about lower to median income, some of these projects will affect everybody, but it's difficult to ascertain what they are. What I'm here to do is raise awareness to the parish administration, the parish council, and the public. None of these matter if you don't have people living here. And there are many, many people struggling because navigating the FEMA programs, it's very, very difficult. And we would like to have, we deal with these people all the time. They don't have the ability to navigate these programs without assistance. So what we're going to try to do as an organization is learn the programs better that the parish offers. But it's $100 million. I'd like to see the parish try to figure out a way to invest some additional money in home repairs and reconstruction. We've invested about $6.3 million. We'll be finished. We'll probably build 60 to 70 new houses and effect about 400 repairs. People cannot live in a house without a bathroom, a kitchen, and a dry roof. So we can spend now, we're dealing with volunteer labor, which is a whole different model than dealing with contractors. But there's volunteer organizations out there that are willing to come. My other concern as a lifelong, not a lifelong resident, but a native of Terrebonne Parish, is our bayou communities. All of our extended communities are losing their culture, their character, because people are moving out, including places like Gibson and Shriever and Gray. But when you go to Pointe-aux-Chenes, look what Ida did to Pointe-aux-Chenes. They just need a lot of help. So we as an organization just want to we'd like to make sure that the priority is on housing and housing recovery, because I think that's a fundamental building block to economic recovery. You have to have those. So we're here. We're not going anywhere, but we are going to do and it's my failure probably to do a better job working with the parish and accessing these programs. But I want to make sure the council people know it. Don't forget about these people. This $100 million I know is prohibited, but if you can access any other kind of money, and if you can partner with nonprofits and NGOs like us, we can just make that money go a lot further than FEMA can. Louisiana Restore. You know, we all know the difficulties. Right now we're dealing with the people are so anxious about Ida sheltering and FEMA trailers. These extensions continue to happen. They have nowhere to go. They just have nowhere to go. They're homeless. We came up with one other solution in there. We're going to try to develop in areas that the elevation's less than 13 feet, which is not a lot of places. But we have now, we call it a tiny house for single elderly. We can build a tiny house about 400 to 500 square feet, 160 mile an hour impact shingles and windows, and we can do it for about $40,000. So that's going to be another solution that we're looking for funding for. But the $100 million is fantastic, but please don't forget about the fundamental economic building block of housing. I just wanted to raise that awareness.
So when I think about that, I mean, when we were, another CSRS effort that they helped us with was our Main Street Corridor Master Plan. And one of the things that plan identifies, and this isn't new for anyone who's got any sort of background or awareness of urban planning is, you know, what can attract housing to an area, at least from the government standpoint, is infrastructure. I mean, what good is it if I want to build a multifamily, affordable housing development wherever I put it, if I have to cover the infrastructure costs too? That's the most expensive and least sexy element of any development, is everything that you never see until it's broken. Then you know about it, but the rest of the time you don't even know it's there. So some of these projects could help with that. I mean, we can bring infrastructure to certain areas that then open up the door to folks who might want to come in to help us with our housing shortages. I mean, I can think of a couple of projects that already could have that component. You know, the complete streets, this wastewater master plan, water redundancy, water quality, I mean, just to name a few. One thing I also wanted to mention is downtown complete streets. I mean, okay, complete streets is a policy that a lot of communities across the country, the state of Louisiana, DOTD, the city of New Orleans, just to name a few locally, have adopted. It basically is a mindset that although streets historically, you know, they're there for vehicular traffic, but when you plan a street, when you're designing it, or you're looking at what to do with existing streets, you need to think more than just about the vehicles. You need to think about pedestrians, bicyclists, infrastructure. You need to think about how people are getting to and from these locations safely. Are the sidewalks wide enough? Is it even an attractive space to be in? I mean, you could have all the greatest infrastructure in the world. If it looks terrible, what developer is going to want to come in and invest millions of dollars in housing that no one's going to want to live in? I mean, it can get down to as simple as that. And the other thing I wanted to point out is downtown complete streets doesn't necessarily limit itself to downtown Houma. I mean, when I think about downtown, there's more downtown areas besides Houma in Terrebonne Parish. I mean, you got to open up your mind a little bit to think about it in those terms. But by the Shreveport Overpass, I mean, for that community, that's their downtown. For Montague, by the fire station, that's their downtown, right? I mean, there was a time, I'm sure, when those places had a lot more commercial. It might look a little more like what when you close your eyes and think about downtown, what it might look like. But just keep that in mind, too, that complete streets is a parish-wide thing. It can happen anywhere, and downtown isn't just downtown Houma. Yes, sir, Mr. Babin. Oh, yeah.
You know, and I'm not trying to end the meeting. I just want to tell everybody how thankful I am as a council person, and I know Mr. Hamden, Mr. Voisin, and Mr. Harding are, that you are here. We as a council do not vote on a specific project, but we as a council have to vote to move this stuff forward. If we don't hear what you are saying, then we cannot pass that on to the people who are making more of the decisions on this. Again, they moved the project to FEMA, or not FEMA, excuse me. They move it up the ladder, and they determine where it's going to be. But I know Mr. Harding, Mr. Hamden, Mr. Voisin, and myself, if we didn't think this was important, we wouldn't be here tonight, okay? But we do. And other council people feel that importance also and may have had something else to do tonight. But know that as this process moves forward, I know each one of us on the council are going to push, because each one of us in our council districts have low to moderate income people living in them, okay? Mr. Watkins just talked about homes that were built by BCF with volunteer help. 23 of them were built into the Dulac area because it was so devastated after Hurricane Ida, okay? So, and they're doing a lot in Lower Lafourche and Grand Isle right now. But his point about this government, us, looking for more money for low to moderate income to be able to partner with a nonprofit, that's the wave of the future. Because if you get these houses that they're building cost about $125,000 just in material. The labor would probably be another $175,000, but it's free. So when we can partner with things like that, it benefits everybody. So again, his point was well taken, and I know we're going to start looking wherever we can look. Unfortunately, government just has so many strings, as Ms. Berg talked about earlier, that are attached to us. But we're trying to cut through those strings to service more of the people. So again, I'm not trying to cut this short. I just wanted to let you know how much I thank y'all for coming here tonight and participating, because it's so important. Because I promise you, we hear it.
Well, thank you. I mean, the more we can cut through, I mean, our goal is to put as much money that we have coming in into the projects themselves to benefit not only the ultimate benefactors of those programs or projects, but the people who are working on them, building them, administering them. I mean, so those are the kinds of things that we'll certainly be putting into the RFPs that go out into the CEAs. Request for proposal, by the way, is what RFP stands for. Thank you. There you go.
Sarah, can you go back to the project list for me real quick? I know that earlier on we talked about that one of the elements of criteria is that it has to have a tie back to the storm. So do all of these projects have a tie back to the storm, like downtown complete streets, extension of the Bayou Walk? Is that all has a tie back to the storm? And I'm just naming a couple.
Well, the tie back to the storm on some of these may be that the businesses that were downtown may have closed. So some of these projects are economic development, hometown revitalization. By making this improvement to this particular piece of infrastructure or bringing something that wasn't there before, we're making downtown more attractive to then bring people to downtown, which in turn gives the investors the wherewithal to say, okay, well, I'm not just going to waste my money by building opening up a business that no one's going to show up because everybody's on MLK or St. Charles Street or wherever, right? Did that answer the question?
Yeah, and then my next question is, for the small business grants, does the owner of the small business have to be an LMI, or do they serve LMI and underserved?
The owner.
Okay, that was my next question. That was it.
I mean, ideally both, right?
But I was just.
I mean,
It's impossible to prove.
yeah, I mean, that's a hard one. I guess it'd be harder to prove who your customers are going to be. But the owner, yes. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Tanya Harris here. So I think some things that I'm still trying to wrap my head around is some of these projects on here don't look like they have a laser focus to the disenfranchised communities, and maybe that's something I could do a little bit more research on, but I think it's going to be hugely important that 40% allocation is monitored and that information is shared back with the communities, the benchmark, the progress on it as well. And I think as a citizen here, what I have not seen in the past is just updates on how this grant is allocated and how these monies are used to directly impact those disenfranchised communities. We've not seen it, and I think that's what we're asking for at this point. If this money is specifically allocated, 40% of allocation must be spent designated to disenfranchised or disadvantaged communities. How are we defining that, and who's monitoring this? Where are the benchmarks on this, and then how can we even know what these numbers are without numbers? So I think we need just a little bit more information here. And to piggyback off her question as well with the small business grants, those are going to require qualifications as well.
Yes.
Will we have access to that information? And I think that's what we need. And then I think some of this work, when we say disenfranchised or disadvantaged communities, this work is very intentional. If you want to get those people, having meetings like this is great, but it's intentional. You have to go into those communities sometimes and go into the churches and grasp those people. We've been excluded so often and for so long. The work is very incremental and it's very, very intentional. I'd like to see the money be used for those people that really, really need it. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around some of those suggestions on there on how I see where it benefits all, but I don't see the laser focus on the disenfranchised communities.
Can you go to the allocation one list? Okay. And I keep talking about this website, but I'm realizing I haven't given. So it's tpcg.org, Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government.org/recovery. That's the web page where all of this information can be viewed. Now, on that page, you will find the list of these projects and a summary, a little bit more detail than just a heading on a screen, right? That's what we submitted to OCD. That's the level of detail that's required for the first submittal. And you can click, there's that PDF of, I don't know how many, 16 pages, something like that?
More than that. I was about
More
to
than that?
say.
46 pages or
Yeah,
something?
Each project is about 5 pages.
Yeah.
And you can actually look at the beneficiary map, and you could look and see the low to moderate income mapped, like what is the beneficiary area for this project? I think that's the question you're asking. So you can see that, you can go online, the whole document is 40 pages. Each project is about 4 to 5 pages. It includes maps, it includes census tract numbers, and it includes the rationale, right, which would be like the tie back to the storm and how, in fact, it would benefit those communities.
And if you have a question about that or see something that you believe is inaccurate, there's time, right? Because OCD is looking at it for 3 months. Then they come back to us, and we have 3 months to work it, rework it, do whatever we do. And when we resubmit, there's even more detail, okay? But you can go, right now, you can go click on it and see the breakdown for these projects. We will have a similar list for the second allocation list of projects, but that's what they're going to be working on with us. Once we have the council's resolution moving this list of projects forward, that's what we have to do between Monday, March 11th and whatever March 19th is.
Okay,
Mr. Jenkins and then
could we
Mr.
go
Wayne.
back to the list of projects? Because it go back to what this gentleman was saying that was sitting right here
the second
in
one.
reference to working together. And it goes back to what I originally said prior to him saying that. It's through a cooperative endeavor and intergovernmental agreement in the form of a public-private partnership through a memorandum of understanding. So, like what I was explaining to this gentleman right here, so under the Park and Recreation District, that's where the community center come and play at, see? Sometimes you got to take words out to really understand what they mean. So then when you say Head Start classroom at Parkwood, see, that go back to South Terrebonne High School, Ellender High School, because they were damaged by the storm too. So that means some of that money could be used to build them schools because you're going to build a new Head Start classroom. I'm just saying.
But aren't the schools...
Hold on, let me finish.
Sure.
Because from what I've seen over the years, because you said they've been getting this money all these years. So what I have seen is money being misappropriated that should have been allocated to one designated group or one, what y'all call the dot or the pin drop, but it has been appropriated to another side of town to build up the other side and to have better amenities over there without having the same equal opportunities in that low and moderate low income area. So that's all I'm saying, because I can't see all these billions of dollars coming to Terrebonne Parish constantly year after year after year, and when you drive through the tunnel, it's like night and day. That's crazy.
Yeah. Candace, so the money that the school board is getting for repairs to their facilities is from insurance and FEMA, PA?
I'm right behind you, sir.
Wayne,
Yeah, so the school board is a completely separate legal entity than Terrebonne Parish Consolidated Government. They have their insurance, their own FEMA public assistance that they are working with to rebuild the schools. We have, and it was included in the list, one of the requests that they have where they have an unmet need, where they haven't been able to fully fund it through an insurance allocation or a FEMA PA. So we will put that as part of one of our possible projects.
so what we have to do is be mindful, like, it is possible that some of this money could be used as long as it's not a duplication of benefit. So if the school is already getting money from FEMA or insurance to repair that school, then that, if we were to give them money for that, that would be a duplication of benefit. But if there's some other component that the school needs that they didn't have before, therefore they're not getting it through insurance, then yes, we could be using this money for that. So it's identifying, okay, you have the need, and then you got to find the source for the need. And although that we didn't really talk too much about this, but there might be a project in the lists that could also be eligible for funding under some other program. Whichever program is stands the best chance of getting approved is the one that we're going to submit it under. Now, sometimes we submit it under 3 different programs because they usually track differently. And then if one comes back with a very positive result, then we'll drop it off the list of the other 2.
I was just going to say, Mr. Thibodeau asked me for us to keep front and center what the national objectives are, in which we have 0 flexibility. So just
Yeah.
as we have these discussions.
Other than housing, we're looking at healthcare. And hopefully, out of all of this that we have out there, let's say, for instance, we can actually have, what's it called, aftercare?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Areas like this, and how to assist the responses and how we can aid through the response of the EMS and those things that actually help because file ratings and hospitals and availability for these things right here. So these are things that, even though we have these other projects, and then some of these other projects that may not come about, we should have in consideration of that because I haven't seen anything that says EMS, aftercare, or how to give assistance like that. I think we have something that has Head Start that's in here also. But the key point that I'm still looking at is 40% of this.
So
It's due to.
I remember the
underserved
community
and low
centers
moderate income.
discussions. It was, some folks were bringing it up because they have a need in their community for after-school care. Sometimes it's tutoring, all the above. Sometimes it's recreation recreation is more than just baseball and football. Recreation is quilting. Recreation is storytelling. It just depends on what you're into, right? So all of that, a lot of that is we were talking about under community centers. So again, this money could pay for the community center. It can build out the facility. Like if it's tutoring, okay, they need the facility, they need tables, they need equipment, but we can't use this money to pay for the teachers and the folks who operate that facility. So that's when the partnerships come in with the nonprofits, with the other local groups, whether it's one already in existence or something new. Stands to reason if you partner with an entity or an organization that already has been in existence, they have a proven track record, as long as they meet the eligibility requirements to fit within the program, then that's likely where we would go.
And sadly, no healthcare.
And sometimes and some things are procured, right? RFP, but you put those requirements into the RFP itself, so the respondents meet that requirement. And if maybe I'm not a nonprofit or whatever, but that's something that I'm looking to get into, well, then maybe you go find that group and say, hey, come look at this RFP, and you put together your own partnership. God, when we procure services for consulting fees, in the RFP, we say, you got to have this, 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 and this. Well, sometimes not every firm has all of that. So they partner with other firms to make a team. And it's the same thing that they could do here. Yeah, it's 7:30, so look, tpcg.org/recovery. That's the web page. If you think about something you wanted to say, but didn't have time or didn't think of it, fine. Send us an email. Go fill out the survey. Call the parish. We're trying to get all the information we can. So thank you all for coming very much. I think it's definitely one of the largest crowds we've had.
Actually,